Broke girls are living in their cars.
That just makes sense about living in my car. Odd items to use the bathroom in. A slew of safety, defense items. Carbon monoxide reader. Baby wipes.
Broke girls are living in their cars. Today's videos come from the Financial Coffee channel and as well the Christine Bichum channel. Both channels are linked in the description so you can go and check them out. Broke girls are living in their cars, and this is a very serious issue that's affecting a lot of women today. What are the implications of women living in their cars, especially as inflation continues rising and people cannot afford rent or even food for that matter? And what are the consequences women will be facing living in their cars? And how many more women could end up living in their cars because of a failing economy and men walking away from relationships and dating and going MGTOW or just MWA? Stay till the end of the video to find out the consequences women are facing as the economy gets worse and more women are living in their cars. Now let's just go ahead and jump right into the very first video.
It's made the most dangerous error as a solo female traveler who lives in her car. I've been doing this over a year and I've never made this error, but here we are tonight. And it's gonna put my safety at risk. So I traveled to the PNW area from North Carolina for cooler car living conditions for summer. I've never been here before, and the time that I've been here, which has been well over a week, it's been down in the 50s at night, and during the day, never really above 85 degrees. Well, I come out of the movie theater tonight, it's 103 degrees. And I'm like, okay, it's gonna go down when the sun goes down. It's gonna be in the 90s. So I'm going to have to figure out how to sleep in my car in 90 degrees, which is going to be even hotter because I'm inside my car, which I don't recommend this. And I'm posting this video so that maybe another solo female traveler can be unlike me and remember to check the weather consistently, regardless on where you're at in the US. Okay, game plan. I came to a Lowe's parking lot hoping there would be other like nomads here because there has been the other times that I'm here, but there's really not anyone here. I was hoping that maybe, I don't know, it'd be a little safer that if something happened, I could have like other nomadic people around, but there's like one guy in an RV and then like one other car.
Guys, I think it's time I share with you a little bit more about myself. I'm usually a pretty private person, so I've been hesitant to give away personal details to the entire internet. However, I am trying to build a like-minded community on this channel, and I feel like in order to do that, I need to give you guys my history and why I do what I do. So here goes. Even as a child, I was really independent and liked being in control of my own world. I would pitch a tent in the front yard and live out of it so I could be on my own. I've always been motivated to learn and grow. I've consistently set goals for myself since I was a little kid. Thankfully, I had a great childhood with wonderful parents that gave me a good foundation for life. I started out adulthood very career focused. I tried college, but it didn't feel right, so that lasted less than 2 semesters. I was drawn to sales because it seemed exciting and had a high income potential. I started selling security systems, and I moved my way up in that industry for over a decade. I really enjoyed my work, but I also struggled with the constant rejection and pressure to meet quotas that comes with sales. Also, sitting at a desk in an office for most of the week didn't feel right either.
Hey, coworker, if you could get that urgent thing to that important guy by the expedited deadline, that would be great. Thanks.
Despite the stress, I performed well, and on the outside I was succeeding. I was blessed to be part of an amazing family. I started dating a really nice guy when I was 20, and we stayed together for 16 years. He has a daughter and a son who I had the pleasure of seeing grow up into wonderful young adults. I claim them as my own, and I refer to them as my kids. Together, we had a 4-bedroom house on 4 acres and a rental property. I had 2 cars, one of which was a sporty red convertible. I was able to buy most of the things that I wanted. I had a high income, but I also had high expenses. My finances were paycheck to paycheck, which goes against my nature because I really like to save and plan for the future. It was only after having all of the things that I thought would make me happy that I realized that's not where my happiness lay. I know it sounds cliche, but I have to really experience something myself to fully understand it. I had felt the pull towards minimalism since watching the movie Into the Wild in 2009, but I suppressed it to pursue material success because I thought that was the only way to be secure and happy. Something started to shift when I turned 30 though. I strongly desired to create a life that had peace and felt right to me. I was being drawn towards downsizing and shedding the things that didn't feel like me anymore. I sold my convertible and I started making plans to spend less and travel more. I quit my sales job to become self-employed in 2016. Since then, I've had a few businesses, the largest of which was a corner store that I owned with my partner. During my time as a business owner, I've experienced great success and massive failure. I've learned a lot about myself through those experiences. I know now that I don't like having employees, overhead, or the stress of a brick and mortar business. I've found that I do best on my own with a small operation. After my partner and I amicably split ways in 2021, I moved into my van in my parents' backyard. That way I could get used to living in a vehicle while still in a safe environment. The fall of 2021 is when I started traveling in my van and started my YouTube channel. My intention was to travel full-time, but after a few months I really missed my family, so I came home for a while. I'm still working towards what balance of family time and travel feels right. I stay with my family in Michigan often to spend time with them and get a break from the road. The older I get, the more I fully understand that it's the people you love in your life that make it worth living. Everything else is secondary. It took a year and a half to do, but I've finally sold my houses, my extra cars, and all of my unnecessary possessions. I could afford to live in a house, but I choose to live in my car because being free of all those material things has allowed me to live a life of freedom and joy.
Let's be very, very clear. No one is going to live in a car just like that. There's some guys can do it, but most women are not going to they're not going to choose to live that very difficult life, out of a car all of the time or most of the time. And then she was living in a van in her parents' backyard. Again, that's really rough. That's a really rough life, y'all. Like, let's not dance around this. Like, if you're living in your car, that's homelessness. And I know it's homelessness because, over 10 years ago, I unfortunately had to experience it before then living on the street. And I'm telling you, when you live in your car, the cops are always telling you to move. It is not a good way of living. And it's a pretty dangerous way of living as well, because there are always people going around trying to open the doors. Guys, you never really have peace at all. You never really have peace, and you have to be so careful because you can be sleeping in your car, and then someone's trying to rob your car, and you're in the car, and you don't want to meet up with them, and they might panic, and they might panic, and one thing leads to another, and it's either you or them, and in this case it was you, and I mean, you're gonna have to talk it over with Jesus because that's who you're gonna be chilling with now. I mean, it's just not worth it. It's really just not worth it. And what a lot of women basically try to act like this is a wonderful and this is an incredible life, and it's almost like they're trying to encourage, and sometimes they are encouraging other young women to go and involve themselves in this type of life. Guys, let's say in the middle of the night you need to go to the bathroom because you've got to poop. What do? Poop in the car? That in most cases, no, especially if you have your mattress out. A lot of times, if you don't have a place like a store you can go into and you get, diarrhea, you're going to have to do it at the side of the road. All right. And everybody knows this. Every traveler, everyone who's lived in their vehicle, knows that you have to poop at the side of the road sometimes. You have to poop in the streets. You have to go poop in the bushes. Like, it's just life. But that's not a life that most people want to experience, It's hard. It's like I just cannot believe what I'm seeing.
That's why I decided to live in a Tesla over a van. The most significant reason for me is free charging. I've traveled all over the US and Canada and have hardly paid a dime. Number 2, I travel with my dog full time, so this is essential. Tesla has dog mode, which keeps the cabin at the desired temperature and locks all the windows. I also have camp mode, which keeps the heat on while I sleep. Number 3, being a solo female traveler means that I have to be very conscious of my safety at all times. I have cameras running 24/7, and anyone coming near my car without a key will receive this message. And even though nobody asked, I have a 4th reason. Teslas are incredibly stealthy and probably the last place you'd ever suspect somebody to be sleeping in their car.
Yeah, that's absolute nonsense. There's a story about a Tesla employee who, before he got laid off from Tesla, was living in the parking lot and sleeping in his Tesla. But the funny thing is that everyone's like, yeah, bro, no one's sorry for you. All right. We all do what we have to do. Like, there's not a lot of sympathy going around anymore. And, I just cannot believe, like, a lot of something. And just to make this clear, there's a lot of women who are making these videos on YouTube, and it's literally their thing. Like, you have a YouTuber who has like 500,000 or 1 million subscribers, and they have a patron and like all of these high production videos, And they're like, I'm living in my car, I'm living in my van, man. And I'm like, bro, you do not live in your van, okay? You are so faking it right now for views. Like the guys, you have the homeless influencers. They are so bad. There's even this one chick in Japan, and like they like she did a video with this dude who's like interviewing homeless people in Japan, and she was like she used to be like an idol, and like I went back and looked at her videos, looked at her Instagram, and she clearly showed on Instagram. It clearly showed on Instagram that she had gotten off the street like a year or two earlier, but she was still like doing the whole homeless identity on YouTube, like, oh, I'm still homeless, like what it's like to be homeless. And you can go and check her Instagram, and she's not homeless. And then like a guy goes and meets her up, and she's dressing like she's like a homeless person and like sitting on the street, like on the ground to pretend like she's homeless, so people will give her money, and people are actually giving her money, like she's cosplaying homelessness. And she's not the only one. There's a couple of them, at least a couple of like homeless YouTubers in Japan, like Japanese people who are doing this, and then they're all over there in the UK, they're in the United States. I've run into issues in the past when I've discussed some of them, and I'm not criticizing them. I'm not shaming the decision to live this life, but I'm just saying that it's very, very questionable. A lot of these people are not actually homeless, but then for the ones that are, it's not a good life. All right. Oh, I shower at Planet Fitness. It's so wonderful, and if I have to pee and poop, I've got containers. OMG, guys, like, do not get sucked into that lifestyle. Do not mess around with that. You mess around, you find out it is a bad way of living. It is a sad way of living, guys. What is this? What are the consequences of this? The consequences are basically that a lot of women, once they enter into this lifestyle, they will not be able to get out of it. It's like once, because, you think that they'd become more economic, they'd become more financially responsible. A lot of people who end up living like this, they do not become more financially responsible. They find ways to waste money on other things, on especially with the cost of food. Because think about this, they don't have a kitchen, but they like to eat well. So they're gonna go and eat. They're gonna spend thousands of dollars, buying food every month. So a lot of their income is gonna go into food, even though they're living in a car. They'll still find ways to buy clothes and purses and all kinds of stuff that they absolutely don't need, and then they have to throw stuff away and then get more stuff, or they're gonna go and get a storage unit and they start packing away stuff in a storage unit. So they're buying all of this junk that they shouldn't be buying while they're living in their cars, and they have a storage unit where they're stocking away all of this junk like it's worth something. And the thing about men is, like, if we buy stuff, we can use it for years. And like, we buy a pair of Nikes and they can gain value over time. A woman buys like a pair of pumps, like, and by next year, they've completely lost their value because they're now out of season. That's how like women's clothing works. Like they buy clothes and by the very next year they're out of season. It's not like that with men. We buy clothing, our jeans. When we buy clothes, it's like you really have to wait sometimes you have to wait a couple of decades for our stuff to go out of style. And even then, by the time it goes out of style, now now the old stuff is vintage. So now you can walk around looking dressed like how your grandpa did, looking like a stud from the 80s. Take care of those clothing. You're like, "Ooh, look at you stepping out of the 80s." Damn right. So now that's a vintage look. It's different for men. Women are, guys, the consequences of this is just that you're going to see more and more women living like this, living in their cars, ultimately losing their vehicles when they break down and having to sleep on the streets, and then hopefully find a shelter. And they're putting themselves at risk being out there like this, because it's very, very dangerous being a woman and living in your car. You never really know what's going to happen. You may go to places where you think there are other people living in their vehicles, but you can't really trust those people necessarily either, because just because they sleep in their cars doesn't mean they're good people. A lot of scumbags and vigilantes are also living that life because they're on the run. So, we have our answer. The future, for broke girls living in their cars, I don't think it's very bright. I think it's one of destitution. And I think that we're going to see as come 2030, 45% of all women between the ages of 25 and 44 are going to be childless and single. And then that's not counting, all the women that are going to be single mothers. When you factor in that, you're going to have a population of single women. Maybe 70 to 80% of all women will be single come 2030. When you factor in the single mothers also. So with that many women who are single and single and don't have someone, and men are no longer supplementing their income, even without people hearing about MGTOW, men are naturally just going MGTOW, saying they want to avoid relationships in society, so they're staying at home. It's not even just walking away. We're MWA. This is an MWA channel, men walking away, men with alternatives. But a lot of dudes are just going straight up MGTOW and saying we don't want to deal with any relationships. We don't deal with society. We're taking our ball and going home, and we want to separate ourselves from society and relationships. And as a result of that, they're no longer subsidizing the living of women, the expenses of women and their children. And that puts us straight on the government. The government cannot take care of these women. The government does not have that money. And it's so funny because now men are like, oh my gosh, instead of trying to get into a relationship or, take women on dates, I can keep all of that money, buy Bitcoin, and live a happy life. And if I need some physical intimacy, then, I can, then I'll just, use my hand, flick my wrist, and then go play some more PlayStation 5. There's some of you guys who play Xbox. No one really plays Xbox. But, for those of you that play Xbox, you'll go and play Xbox or Nintendo Switch or you have your gaming PC or gaming laptop, play some Steam, or some of y'all are still rocking Atari. Shout out to Atari. But, I mean, the future is not looking bright for broke girls living in their cars. Okay, it's a future of destitution. It's a future of hardship. It's a future of homelessness. If you are living in your car, you are homeless. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, consider checking out our newsletter for my personal thoughts, insights, and a free copy of my ebook, The Blueprint for Escaping the Rat Race. Click the link in the description to get your free copy of The Blueprint for Escaping the Rat Race so you too don't have to live in your car like these broke girls. What do you think about the situation affecting these ladies that are living in their cars? Do you agree that this is homelessness? This is not luxury. This is homelessness. Let me know your thoughts and we'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA Men walking away. And cheers.